Hello everyone, welcome to my update US gossip channel. It had been months since the news of the Coyote Pass sale broke, and while fans believed that chapter was finally closed, the real story had only just begun, because behind the cameras, behind the carefully crafted TLC edits and the emotional confessionals, something deeper was stirring. The tension that had long simmered between Janelle, Meri, and Kody Brown had reached a boiling point. And now, for the first time in over a decade of shared history, shared pain, and shared property, Janelle and Meri were joining forces, not as sister wives, not as spiritual partners, but as two independent women ready to confront the man who had once promised them forever. When the news hit Flagstaff that legal notices had officially been filed, Janelle Brown and Meri Brown versus Kody Brown, it sent shockwaves through the family and the fanbase alike. The documents, stamped by the Arizona Superior Court, outlined their joint demand, the return of what they believed was rightfully theirs, the Coyote Pass property, or at least the portions Kody had allegedly redistributed or liquidated without full consent. For years, viewers watched as Kody preached about family unity and building the dream, about each wife having an equal piece of land to someday call home, but as time went on, promises twisted into paperwork, and paperwork twisted into confusion. Now, the two women who once stood quietly behind Kody's vision were standing in front of him in a courtroom, reclaiming the power they'd lost in the chaos of his control. Janelle, ever practical, had kept meticulous records, the down payments, the tax receipts, the joint accounts that she and Kody once shared when their financial worlds were intertwined. She'd long said that she believed in building something, that the land represented more than dirt and trees, it was the symbol of decades of sacrifice. But when Kody began dividing and redefining the property lines after Christine's departure, something broke inside her. The woman who once believed that patience would eventually pay off realized that Kody's promises had an expiration date. "He told me we'd build," Janelle later said in her confessional-style statement attached to the filing, but every year that passed, it became more about control and less about dreams. "He stopped seeing us as partners, we became obstacles." For Janelle, this wasn't about revenge, it was about principle. It was about accountability. It was about the years she spent camping in an RV, living in Flagstaff's brutal winters, trusting that someday the land would be hers to build on. Now, with her new sense of independence, and bolstered by her thriving health business and supportive children, she decided she wouldn't let Kody's shifting definitions of family property erase her contributions. Meri's motivations were layered differently, but no less powerful. She had been silent for far too long, a silence born of heartbreak, manipulation, and misplaced loyalty. After her catfishing scandal and her spiritual divorce from Kody, she'd been left dangling in uncertainty, no legal tie, no emotional tie, and, as it turned out, no property tie either. But when Meri finally saw the new land documents, with her name noticeably missing from parcels she'd been promised, something hardened inside her. She wasn't just going to walk away quietly anymore. Her new in business, her self-worth, her rediscovered confidence, they'd all given her a clarity she hadn't had in years. Meri realized that the same man who told her she was still part of the family had simultaneously been erasing her on paper. Her legal notice was short, professional, but cutting. She wanted a full accounting of the property's financial history, including any sales or redistributions Kody made after 2021. She demanded either restitution or the reinstatement of her share. It wasn't about money for Meri, it was about acknowledgement. It was about being seen again after years of invisibility. When Kody received the notices, sources close to the family said he was furious and blindsided. He allegedly stormed into Robin's office, waving the papers in disbelief. "They're suing me? My own wives are suing me," he shouted, according to someone who overheard the argument. Robin, ever emotional, reportedly tried to calm him down, saying, "Kody, they're hurt. They feel wronged. Maybe we can settle this privately." But Kody wasn't in a settling mood. His pride had been wounded, and that pride, always his greatest downfall, made him dig in deeper. He called the suit an act of betrayal, claiming the property divisions had been agreed upon years earlier. But what Kody called agreement, Janelle and Meri called deception. The filings pointed to inconsistencies between what was promised in verbal discussions and what ended up in legal documents. Kody had refiled the Coyote past deeds in 2023 to account for adjusted holdings, allegedly transferring larger shares to himself and Robin while reducing or consolidating the parcels once allocated to Janelle Meri. The courtroom scene, once it became public, played out like something straight out of Sister Wives, raw, uncomfortable, and steeped in years of emotional residue. Janelle arrived first, calm and collected, with her lawyer, a woman known for handling complex family business disputes. Meri followed soon after, quietly dignified, carrying a thick binder filled with emails, receipts, and old TLC correspondence outlining the show's portrayal of the equal family vision. Kody entered last, his energy heavy and defiant, wearing a navy suit instead of his usual casual jeans. Robin was by his side, visibly nervous. For a moment, the air between them all was thick, a decade of love, betrayal, and spiritual bonds now distilled into cold, hard legal arguments. The judge, familiar with the show due to its notoriety, had to remind everyone that this wasn't about feelings or reality TV, it was about contracts, property rights, and accountability. Yet, even in that sterile courtroom, emotion seeped into every word. Janelle's attorney spoke first, outlining the timeline, from the original land purchase in 2018, when the Browns moved to Flagstaff, through the chaotic years of disagreements, to the eventual sale. My client, she said firmly, contributed financially to the acquisition and maintenance of the property under the assumption of shared ownership. That assumption was violated when Mr. Brown unilaterally altered the terms and benefited from her investments. Every sentence was a quiet victory for Janelle, who sat watching Kody without flinching. Then came Meri's turn. Her lawyer, calm but direct, presented evidence showing Meri's early payments toward the property and her removal from official deeds without notice. Ms. Brown may not have been legally married to Mr. Brown at the time, the lawyer said, but she was still a documented financial contributor to the family estate. She deserves transparency, if not compensation. When Kody's side finally responded, his defense centered around what he called mutual understanding. He claimed that the family had verbally agreed that once the spiritual marriage is dissolved, the properties would revert to those still legally tied to him, meaning Robin. They left, Kody said, his voice rising. They walked away from the family, the faith, and the dream. I didn't steal anything. I just protected what was left. But the words rang hollow to those who knew the full story. Even Robin seemed uneasy, avoiding eye contact as the judge asked Kody to clarify whether any written agreement existed. None did. That was the heart of it. Kody had built his entire life on handshakes and trust me promises, but trust wasn't a legal currency. As the proceedings continued, flashbacks played in fans' minds, Janelle in her RV saying, "This isn't sustainable," Meri confessing, "I still love him, but he doesn't love me," Kody ranting in confessionals about disloyalty and betrayal. Every word from those episodes suddenly seemed like foreshadowing. The courtroom had become the ultimate confessional. And while TLC cameras weren't rolling for this real-life drama, insiders whispered that both Janelle and Meri were open to filming future specials to document their journey toward justice. Fans began to rally behind them online, flooding social media with hashtags like #JusticeForJanelle and #MeriDeservesBetter. For the first time in years, Meri and Janelle were united, not as rivals, but as allies against the man who once bound them together. Back in Flagstaff, Kody and Robin's home reportedly became tense. The lawsuit, and the public backlash that followed, weighed heavily on their already fragile dynamic. Robin cried during one confessional video later shared on her Cameo, saying, "I just wanted peace. I didn't want it to come to this." But for many fans, sympathy for Robin had run dry. They saw her as complicit, benefiting from a system that had favored her since day one. Meanwhile, Janelle's children, especially Maddie and Logan, stood by their mother's side publicly. "Mom deserves what she earned," Maddie tweeted, echoing the sentiment of thousands of viewers who'd watched their mother endure years of emotional neglect. Meri, for her part, didn't post much, but a cryptic message appeared on her Instagram story shortly after the filing: "Truth always comes to light. You can't rewrite history when receipts exist." The media frenzy was immediate. Every entertainment outlet covered the case, dissecting the family dynamics and speculating about what this could mean for the future of sister wives. Would TLC film this courtroom showdown? Would the Brown family ever be in the same room again? And, most of all, what would happen to the legacy of Coyote Pass, that once promised land that had now become the symbol of broken dreams? In an interview with a close friend, Janelle reportedly said, "If I get nothing else from this, at least my voice is finally being heard." That statement became the defining quote of the entire ordeal, powerful, simple, and deeply resonant. Weeks later, when the judge issued the preliminary ruling, it wasn't a total victory, but it was progress. The court ordered a full financial audit of all Coyote Pass transactions and held off on final judgment until those findings were complete. It was enough to give Janelle and Meri hope, and to put Kody on notice that his word was no longer law. The women left the courthouse together, their expressions calm, even relieved. For once, they weren't walking behind him. They were walking beside each other, equal in strength, equal in determination. Cameras caught that moment, and it instantly went viral, the image of two women who had once competed for the same man now united in purpose, reclaiming their narrative. As time passed, the case became a turning point not just for the Browns, but for the show itself. It forced fans and producers alike to confront what Sister Wives had always been about, not plural marriage, not faith, but the evolution of women who found